call this meeting of the Williamsburg-James City County School Board to order. Can I have a motion to certify closed session, please?
Mr. Chair, I certify to the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ms. Aller?
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley. Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. And Ms. Aller, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Cook.
Here.
Ms. Hummel.
Here.
Mrs. Hunley.
Here.
Mrs. Ortego.
Here.
Mr. Dowell.
Here. I do want to make note that Miss Sandy Young, Miss Young, is out of town away from this meeting. Otherwise, she would be here. Miss Aller, nope. Can I have a motion to allow Dr. Byrd to attend the meeting via electronic communication?
Chair, I move to allow Dr. Byrd to attend the meeting via electronic communication.
I'll second.
Thank you, Miss Cook and Miss Ortego. Miss Aller?
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. And may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as distributed.
Thank you, Miss Ortego.
A
Is there a
second.
second? I think that was Miss Cook. Miss Hunley, okay. Hunley, thank you. Miss Aller?
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
All right. Brings us to item 4.01, announcements and superintendent's report. Dr. Heron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report this evening begins by marking the beginning of Black History Month and celebrating the impact and contributions African Americans have made to our region and our world across history. Our schools have activities and events planned throughout the month to recognise the accomplishment and lasting impact African Americans have made on our society. The honours and celebrations across our schools are many and varied. At Laurel Lane, second grade students will participate in a collaborative paper quilt activity, and fourth graders will research famous African American scientists and inventors. Fifth graders at J.B. Blayton will continue work on an informative research paper on the civil rights movement, where they will discuss discrimination, segregation, and the people and events that shaped the civil rights movement. Matoka students will participate in a school-wide reading challenge that features books that celebrate African American heroes and history. Middle schools are planning creative ways to weave biographies of influential African Americans into daily and weekly announcements and presentations. Schools will showcase visual and written works of African American artists and share facts, trivia, and quotes about famous African Americans. Our high schools are celebrating the artistic and cultural contributions of African Americans too. Warhill will host a guest speaker. Jamestown will showcase African American singing, dancing, and spoken word. And Lafayette will create an African American history museum in its library. Looking back to last month, students learned about and celebrated the significant contributions of Dr. King. Second grade students at J.B. Blayton shared their dreams for the future, and Norwich and kindergarten students sung about caring, loving, and peace all around the world. I look forward to being out in the schools over the next month and seeing many of the activities celebrating our diversity as a school division. Finally, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we want to take a moment tonight to honour you on this first day of School Board Appreciation Month. The Virginia School Boards Association theme this year, Building the Future of Public Education, reflects the commitments you have made, not only to our school division and community today, but the impact your work will have on students for generations to come. You, as school board members, tirelessly advocate for our students, staff, and community before local, state, and federal officials. We appreciate your leadership in setting the direction for WJCC schools and working collaboratively to bring that vision to life for our 11,000 students, 1,800 staff members, and our broader community. On behalf of every employee and every student at WJCC schools, thank you, school board members, for your exemplary service. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. Are there any updates or reports from board members at this time? Ms. Cook and then Ms. Hunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your calling on me tonight. I just wanted to report that today I participated in the Virginia School Board Association's Federal Relations Committee Advocacy Day, and we met with Congressman Whitman and also Senators Kane and Warner, and later on we'll schedule something with Congresswoman Loria, who was not available today, but just let them know what issues of import to school divisions in the Commonwealth so that they can advocate for us at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ms. Hunley.
Yes, last week we met with the Student Advisory Council or Committee. So we had 9 students, 3 high schools, 3 students, classes for each one. There were 3 students that weren't there, but it was so nice and refreshing to hear from the young people how they feel things are going and just to talk with them.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Hunley. Ms. Ortega.
And I have participated in a couple virtual meetings with the 21st Century Career Ready Committee. I might not have gotten that exactly right. And they're planning a pretty interesting event for the spring. I don't know what stage it is, so I don't want to make too many announcements that maybe I shouldn't, but they are planning some interesting events with mock interviews and resume training for students, which I think is really exciting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Ortega. And I think I'll add that last week we had an opportunity to spend some time as board members up in Richmond with our legislators, and they were good enough to spend some time with us via Zoom. And I just wanted to thank them for their hard work. I'm sure they're cluing into this meeting, but I want to thank them for their hard work representing Williamsburg and James City County and Richmond through tireless nights and days and weekends. We've got a lot of good information from them, and I know that Ms. Cook is relaying some information to them as been asked for as well. And so I appreciate that that collaborative kind of effort to engender good quality education for our students. With that, let's move on to item 5.01, public comment. Ms. Hummel.
It is at this point in our meeting where citizens are invited to address the board. Those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. These speakers will be asked to come to the podium. When their names are called, state their names for the record and direct their comments to the chair of the board. It is the board's interest and desire that all comments are heard and respected. Hence, the citizens are asked not to engage in applauding, verbal outbursts, or any other type of demonstrations during the presentations. Personnel matters are not considered in public meetings, therefore the board requests that all speakers refrain from making reference to specific individuals in any form or fashion. Though the board does not respond to your comments are heard and appreciated. Each speaker is allocated 1 minute and 30 seconds to make their presentation, and the board asks that you respect this time limitation. Also, please be reminded that no time may be yielded to another speaker. Your acceptance and adherence to these guidelines will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair, and my directions are concluded. The first speaker that we have tonight is, I think it's Tia Dunnell, and then after Tia will be Brett Dunnell.
Thank you. Should I start? Yes. Okay. Virginians elected a governor to represent the beliefs of the majority with Executive Order 2. I watched the board meeting from January 20th. I was very discouraged by the positions that repeatedly referred to legal counsel in their interpretation of Senate Bill 1303. WJCC schools would in no way be liable for following an executive order from Governor Youngkin. The job of our schools is not to analyze the legislation. That is the job of the Virginia Supreme Court and the General Assembly. WJCC's job is to execute the legislation of Executive Order 2 and educate our children. Executive Order 2 is not a mandate against masks. The order is allowing parents to have the right to choose whether their children should wear a mask or not. This order simply recognizes the fact that parents should have the right to choose what is best for their children. The impact of masking on children's social development and mental health is now common knowledge, yet it's being ignored. The data from numerous school districts across the country that have dropped mask mandates long ago and are successfully in session is also being ignored. Wjcc is charged with representing the taxpayers. You cannot pick and choose which executive orders from the office of the governor to follow. Parents should determine whether it is best for their children to wear a mask or not the school system. Many local private schools are following Executive Order 2. Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Poquoson, West Point, Gloucester Public Schools are following Executive Order 2.
Thank you, Ms. Dowell.
Thank you. Thank
If
you
you
for
want to leave
time.
your remarks with the clerk. And,
Thank you very much.
Brett
Thank you.
Dunnell, followed by Christopher Wjcc. Brett Dunnell, followed by Christopher Wjcc.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Brett Dunnell. I'm a dentist here in Williamsburg and a resident of James City County. I've been treating patients throughout the entire COVID pandemic. Fortunately, due to its numerous mutations, Omicron is weak and barely resembles the original or the Delta strain of COVID. No children have died in Virginia from Omicron. We all know numerous people that have acquired Omicron with mild symptoms and quickly recovered. The CDC recommendations are just that. They're not requirements. If they were indeed requirements, schools would not be open, as they are only a fraction of the recommendations are being followed. The recommendations are non-specific and antiquated based on the original and Delta strains of COVID, not Omicron. The Center of Disease Control statements only represent a position on disease. They have no position on the damage being done to our children's social development and mental health. No one is saying that you cannot wear a mask. Most would likely choose to continue wearing a mask. If you feel a mask is required to protect you, you are protected by your mask and your vaccine. I can tell you from science and firsthand experience that masks offer extremely limited to no protection from any virus. But I wouldn't dare demand my beliefs enforced upon others. You state that you're waiting on the clearance from the health advisory team. This team is made up of 4 selected individuals, only one of which is a medical doctor. There's not a single child psychologist, therapist, or counselor on this team. The health advisory team was selected, not elected, yet they hold the power to determine the course of thousands of children. Unfortunately, 12 children in Virginia have passed from COVID since the onset, all from the original and Delta strain, none due to Omicron. In the same time period, over 150 children have died from suicide in Virginia. That is more than 10 times the number that have died from COVID, much less Omicron. In 2021, depression caused by social and psychological stressors
Donald.
Thank you.
such
I'll
as
have to ask you
mandates
to
and masking resulted
leave
in
your
a nationwide
remarks.
51% increase
Can
in
you leave your
attempted
remarks?
suicide
Mr. Donald,
among adolescent
I need you to
girls.
leave your
Please
remarks
stop
with the clerk,
neglecting our
please.
children's mental health and let the parents choose.
I need you to let the next speaker come up, please.
Absolutely. Suicide's pretty important. Who do I leave this with? Thank you.
Christopher Wjcc.
My name is Christopher Wjcc. I'm a resident of Williamsburg. Good evening, members of the board. I'm here to ask you to reconsider the decision to continue with the mask mandate in opposition to the executive order signed by the governor. We've come a long way since the beginning of this pandemic, and it is time to start adapting to the current situation. First, no one isn't asking for a ban on masks, just the opportunity for parents to make the choice for their own children. Second, masks, at least as currently used in the school setting, do not work. The Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota recently reviewed most of the available studies on masks and determined that cloth masks are only mildly effective at preventing COVID transmission, and that after about 26 minutes, there is no additional benefit over not wearing masks at all. Surgical masks only increase that time to an hour. Furthermore, the UK and the EU have removed mask mandates in schools for all children 12 and under. Does that make them anti-science or anti-child? We are told that vaccines are safe and effective and anyone over the age of 5 can get them. If the concern is for the adults, they can get vaccinated and they'll be fine. The vaccines either work or they don't. The risk to children is extremely low. Children's ages infant through 14 are up to 11 times more likely to die in a car accident, 9 times more likely to die by homicide, and 12 times more likely to die by drowning. It's like being afraid to fly in an airplane, even though you are much more likely to die in a car accident on the way to the airport. We need to reclaim our bravery and reset our risk meters. Fifth, the impact on continued masking is damaging to children. Elementary school especially is a crucial period in child development where we develop language and social skills, and we will have a whole generation who are behind in these areas due to the fear of adults. fears of the adults. Finally, we hear that children are resilient, but it is not our children's job to be resilient. It's a parent's job to be resilient for them.
Thank you, Mr. Wjcc.
Gayla
Thank you, sir.
Baumgart? Yeah, Gayla Baumgart.
Waiting for low community transmission is an unnecessary prerequisite for reducing mitigations. It means keeping all these many and extreme universal mitigations indefinitely, which are so aggressive that they are doing harm to the staff and students. Doing mitigation to the nth degree to the point of harm is not necessary, nor is it in the spirit of the public health recommendations. We can protect the vulnerable while also restoring normalcy, even with high community spread. Vaccines and treatments have defanged COVID for the vast majority of people. We can stop solely focusing on how to prevent a virus from spreading at the expense of education. The staff and kids are harmed for years now with these overzealous mitigations, many of which are pure virtue theater. We have done everything you have asked us to do, and absolutely, the harm of these overzealous mitigations outweighs the risk of Omicron. The people in the hospital are unvaccinated people over 65. My kids are not a threat of killing your staff. About a third of large U.S. school districts are mask optional, and they have no more staff issues than us. Stop this baseless scare tactic threat that if you reduce mitigations, we will have to go virtual learning. I have no trust that you intend to reduce mitigations. In fact, you recently tightened mitigations more in my kids' school, even though COVID is less of a threat than ever. I will not accept being told to keep waiting for COVID to disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baumgart.
John Jeffries?
Good evening. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak here with you guys this evening. Just wanted to bring something up to the group as well as to the county if you're not aware of it. It's my understanding that children at War Hill High School, I don't know about the other specific high schools because I don't have children that go there, that are not wearing a mask, who have elected to not wear a mask, are being treated differently. They're being ostracized and put into isolation areas and where they are not allowed to have their cell phones. They're being told if they want to spend time with their friends and go back to their classes that they just need to put on a mask. These are the things that are kind of concerning as far as health and safety in the schools. I've heard now from 3 different students at War Hill High School that the bathrooms are atrocious. Children go out throughout the day trying not to use the restrooms. Doors are torn off of the stalls. Toilet paper is rarely found in the bathroom. It's put into the toilets to clog them up. I was told that if you're considered royalty if you defecate into the sinks. They urinate on the floors, the walls, and this is the kind of stuff that is okay and is a huge health concern to our students. However, we're more concerned about using our hall monitors and our security monitors to escort children that are not wearing a mask throughout the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Thank you, sir.
Melissa Jeffries? Melissa Jeffries.
Good evening. Thank you, School Board and Superintendent, for allowing us to speak here in person tonight. My name is Melissa Jeffries, and I have had the privilege of having 3 students go through Wjcc schools. 1 is graduated and 2 are at War Hill High School. I'm coming to you tonight to share a story with you of what happened in fall of 2019. If you can remember back, this was pre-COVID. Imagine a world without masks in a school where our children went to school without any kind of fear or prejudice. That fall, my middle son, Trevor, who was in 10th grade at the time, came down with the flu. I called, kept him home from school and called the middle school and let the middle school nurse know that my son, Evan, was going to school. He had no symptoms of the flu, but to call me immediately if he showed any signs, and I would come get him immediately from school. She kind of chuckled on the phone with me and said, "You know, Miss Jeffries, I've never had a parent call and tell me that before, but we have 78 cases of the flu at Toano Middle School this week." 78 cases of the flu. Not one mask, not one letter, not one social distancing happening. I'm sharing this with you now because this is the world that we lived in. This is the world that we're going to live in. We have the flu. We have COVID. We're never going back to a world without it. We need to allow parents to make decisions for their children, to what is right for their children. Allow us as parents to make those rights and those choices for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffers.
Abby Johnson.
Hi there, thanks a lot. I'm a resident of James City County. Can I pull this down or no? It doesn't matter. I can keep it on.
You should keep it.
Okay, that's fine.
Keep it on.
That's fine. My daughter goes to Hornsey Middle School, and I'm actually here to support the current mandate from James City County and Williamsburg schools. I think we should follow the CDC and the Virginia Health Department, and we should, just have caution right now until we figure out what's going on with this latest surge. I would say that if all kids were vaccinated, I might feel differently, but I think for right now, I just support what you all are doing and appreciate that you're taking all of the different sides into consideration. I also have an 86-year-old mother who lives with me, so obviously public health goes beyond just the children at stake. So thank you very much for everything you do. I know it's a tough job, and I appreciate being a resident of this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Jill Piles.
Hello. Happy Groundhog's Day tomorrow. Welcome to the new people, new school board leaders, members. Thank you for your service. In the student handbook on page 4, I appreciate that says you can advocate for your child and meet with school staff when requested. So thank you for some of the staff has met with me. I have a child at Lafayette High. We all feel for the teachers, so let me know if I can help you. You all have my email address. I wrote to Mr. Keever today. So when I worked with special ed, we had IEP plans, and you can say with vulnerable children, have an IEP plan, 3 mass breaks, write it down, have everybody on board. About the last school board meeting, in the newspaper it said there were many of whom did not follow current masking guidelines at the meeting. Please don't judge. You don't know the other person's situation. Respect each other. No blame, no shame. I did want to comment on 3 students I know of who are segregated because they're not wearing a mask. So I wanted to protest that. Treat others as you want to be treated. Be sure to Google. There's a good NPR article after 2 years, growing calls to take masks off children in school. So NPR, that was good. Nominate somebody for Hero of the Month with Wjcc School District. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Piles.
That concludes our.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. All right, we'll move on to item 6.01, review revisions to the 2021-22 school calendar. Dr. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, Mr. Keever's going to present some changes in this year's calendar that we promised to bring back at this time of year. Mr. Keever, want to join us? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Herron. In November of 2021, we brought forward to the school board several potential calendar revisions that got us through the first week of March of 2022, and we pledged at that time to come back to the board with additional modifications. So our discussion this evening is to look at a couple of additional modifications to help us finalize the school year, this particular school year. One of the recommendations we're making this evening is to designate April 29th, which is a Friday, as a student holiday. That day would be used for teachers to collaborate, do some planning, professional learning, what have you. So that would be one change we're recommending. The second change involves designating June 10th as graduation day. In order to get that accomplished, we suggest that June 9th become the last day of school for K-12 and that we move the early release days earlier in that week. So we would start early release on June 6th and 7th for high school to begin the exam process, and then middle school, elementary, and high school would have early release on the 8th and 9th. We're going to ask that you, and let me just show you this visually, graphically. So the blue arrow demonstrates where we have already made a change in the calendar, and we did that back in November as a result of some of the feedback we received relative to the virtual learning day. You may recall that previously March 4th had been designated a virtual learning day. With the feedback received, we shifted that to a student holiday, teacher planning and collaboration day. That's the blue arrow. The orange arrow in the middle part of the page designates April 29th, and the other two orange arrows are demonstrating where we make changes in June. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know this is also on the agenda a little bit later, hopefully for approval, so that we can go ahead and finalize the graduation date for our community.
Questions from our board colleagues? Okay, seems pretty straightforward from our perspective. Dr. Beers, are you good with the presentation as you've seen it?
Sorry. I support the draft of the calendar. It's up now for several reasons. One of them, I like the idea of starting school at the beginning of the week rather than the middle of the week. And that is what this calendar has done. And
The next one.
Dr. Beers, we're not on that one yet. You might be ahead of us.
I'm sorry.
You may be ahead of us. We're not on that calendar yet. We're on the modification to this year's calendar. So you might be on the, I think you're on.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's hard to.
Come to item 6.01. Come to item 6.01. Agenda item 6.01. Ms. Cook?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Keever's comment about finalizing graduation for the community. So just when that action happens, can the community expect further communication on that topic?
They can. We are very prepared to tell the entire community that we will graduate all three schools on Friday, June the 10th. We will share some specific times as we get a little bit further into the month of February.
Okay, so times and locations not are TBD.
I can also share with you the location.
Okay.
The Kaplan Arena at College of William & Mary.
Okay.
So we're excited this year to be able to use the Kaplan Arena again, and have all three graduations on the same day there, and a communication pending board approval of this calendar later tonight. A communication will go to families this evening.
Thank you.
And just to, Friday the 10th.
Friday the 10th, that is correct. Previously, we had designated the 9th, 10th, and 11th as potential graduation days to give us some opportunity to navigate the terrain. When William & Mary became an option, we really seized on that and feel like the 10th is the best possible scenario for all involved.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Beers, you've clearly done your homework and gotten ahead of us, but I want to make sure you understand that item 6.01, where we are, we will be looking at this as an action item later in the evening, and the adjustments here that we're looking at is April 29th as a teacher workday, and pushing the last day of the school calendar day to the 9th rather than the 10th, and the 10th being graduation. You copy that? Dr. Beers, you good with that? I think he might be good with that. Okay. All right. If there are no other questions for Mr. Keever on this, we'll move on to 6.02.
This presentation will be a little bit more detailed as we start to look at the 22-23 school calendar for the board's consideration and discussion this evening. wanted to begin by setting the frame for the academic calendar development and share with you that the calendar committee, which is comprised of principals, assistant principals from all three levels, teachers from all three levels, as well as central office staff and parents from the community, met 3 times over the course of December and January and focused really on 4 key considerations that are before you this evening on the screen. Doing what's best for student achievement and staff wellness, maintaining the pre-Labor Day start that we utilized in the 21-22 school year, the idea of 2 solid 5-day weeks at the winter holiday break, and then looking strategically to schedule opportunities for teacher collaboration, learning, and planning during the school year. The group in their first meeting was assigned a task of creating their own ideal school calendar. And the group embraced that with gusto. We received 15 or 16 individual calendars, trying to maximize each person's own personal preference relative to putting together an academic calendar. I think the group also found that to be challenging because there are a number of different scenarios that have to be taken into consideration. One of the scenarios is we were determining that to use a 180-day calendar as a starting point. The group then worked in smaller groups to try to build and reach consensus around a calendar framework that they could best agree on. And we went from about 18 calendars to 5, and from 5 calendars with input from the senior leadership team and again the calendar committee are bringing forward 2 for your consideration this evening. One of those calendars involves a start on Monday, the 29th of August. That start is most akin to the start that we utilized this year. Thanksgiving break would fall the 23rd through the 25th. The winter holiday vacation would be the 19th through the 30th. I will also add that January 2nd would be a part of that winter break because January 2nd, we believe, will be the federal holiday celebrating January 1st. So students will report back on the 3rd of January. Spring break in that first full week of April, and then the closing on Thursday, June the 15th. Let me show you some specifics. I believe you have this in your board packet as well in case it's challenging to read on the screen. Taking into consideration the idea of maximizing time throughout the school year for teachers to be able to collaborate, learn, and plan together, there are specific times throughout this first semester that are designated as such. We start on Monday the 29th. We are obligated to not be in school for students on the 2nd of September based on state code. There's that Labor Day holiday on the 5th of September, and then we're into a solid month of September of school. That first Monday of October would be designated as a student holiday, which would be utilized for teacher collaboration, learning, and planning. And then at the end of October, the 28th of October, we have designated or recommending designating a K-12 early release. That pretty well lines up with the end of marking period 1 and providing teachers and staff an opportunity to close out that marking period on that Friday. Election Day is November the 8th. That would be a student holiday and a teacher collaboration, learning, and planning day. We've also designated 2 days, that 3rd week in November, for elementary school conferences, elementary school early release. And then, as we've done in the past several years, provided 2 school days the week of Thanksgiving and then 3 days for that Thanksgiving break. We would go to school through the 16th of December, and then the winter holiday would begin. As I referenced, the 2nd of January would be the celebration of the January 1st holiday, and we're back in school the 3rd through the 26th. Taking the Martin Luther King holiday on the 16th of January. The 27th is designated as a student holiday. In essence, that's the close of semester 1 or marking period 2. The second semester, based on this schedule, we would see President's Day as a day that Wjcc is closed. And then at the beginning of March, March the 6th, that's designated as, again, a student holiday, which equates to a teacher collaboration, learning, and planning day. The 31st of March is a K-12 early release. That's the day that precedes the spring vacation. That's also the end of the 3rd marking period. Feeling like teachers needed a little bit of time to close out their grades, etc., before spring break, wanted to provide that early release day there. At the end of April, designating the 28th again as a student holiday. That's probably the last possible day before we get into May to provide another breather for all parties as we begin May. In fact, I believe it would be May 1st in 2023. AP testing begins, and then SOL testing is not far behind it. This calendar ends on Thursday, the 15th of June, which would facilitate potentially a teacher workday planning day on the 16th, and potentially also be a nice landing spot for commencement in 2023. Talking a little bit about some of the key calendar considerations from the committee and from the senior leadership team, I wanted to elaborate that this particular version of the calendar, which I'm referring to as the 829 version for ease, it contains 6 teacher collaboration learning planning days spread throughout the school year. There are 6 early release days for elementary school, 2 specifically for elementary school. Those are the 2 days in November, and then 4 for K-12 that are spread throughout the year. 4 days of early release for middle school, and then 6 days of early release for high school, 2 specifically for the early exam period in June, and then the other days are general K-12. And because I know that there may be a question about how the marking periods line up, I wanted to share with you the potential tentative marking period. With a 180-day calendar, it would be ideal to have each marking period at approximately 45 days. Sometimes based on when you start and when you want to end and the things that you want to do in the middle, it doesn't work out exactly at 45 days per marking period. This is our best tentative estimate at what the marking periods would look like right now based on the days that we put into the calendar. The second version of the calendar is the version I'm calling the 824 version, because that would be a start on Wednesday, the 24th of August. The committee felt like the concept of starting pre-Labor Day was a strong concept that the community supported, and wanted to also get a sense of whether or not the community supported an additionally early start. The thought was, instead of perhaps starting on the 22nd, which would be an additional full week, to split the difference and start on Wednesday the 24th. The Thanksgiving break would, of course, fall at the same time. The winter holiday at approximately the same time as well. Spring break dialed in with the rest of the peninsula the first week of April. And then this school calendar would have us ending on Thursday, June 8th, following a similar format to the 829 version. Because of the earlier start and the idea that we wanted to provide some time during the year for teachers to be able to plan together, collaborate, and learn from one another, the calendar does incorporate some early release days. As an example, there's an early release day on this particular version on September the 30th. That'd be a K-12 early release. There's also one at the end of October. That would be the 24th of October. That's on or about the end of the first marking period. There is a teacher work day, planning day, collaboration day on November the 8th, which again is election day. The same elementary conference schedule as the previous version, and I've already mentioned the idea behind the Thanksgiving break. In this particular version, the 824 version, because of the number of days, this marking period 2 in the first semester would end on Friday the 20th of January, and then that 23rd of January would be designated a student holiday, records day, teacher planning day, etc. That's why that day is there. Moving into the second semester, or the spring semester, there would be President's Day, as we've typically celebrated the third week in February. Again, a specific teacher planning, collaboration, learning day on March the 3rd. That would be a student holiday. The end of the marking period 3, we would designate the 31st of March as an early release day. The spring break occurs, then April 28th would be designated as an early release day. And then we would finish up the school year on Thursday, June the 8th. Utilizing the same framework to look at sort of the number of days spread out through the calendar for various items, This calendar allows for us to build in 4 teacher collaboration learning planning days, and you'll note there are increased number of early release days that are built into this calendar based on starting earlier and attempting to also finish earlier. One other item I should note in this particular version, as we talked about it as a team this morning, the earlier start for students would necessitate an earlier start for staff. And that earlier start for staff could provide us some challenges with our payroll system and some of the challenges associated with looking at how we pay folks for a half month or the X number of days they work in August. So that's one piece of the puzzle that if we were to go this direction would need to be further examined. And then lastly, I wanted to share with you the tentative marking period days. Again, ideally 90 days per semester and 45 spread across. This is our best tentative estimate of the marking periods with the 824 version. Next steps would include offering the community an opportunity to provide feedback beginning tomorrow, closing on the 10th of February, with the idea of synthesizing that feedback by Monday the 14th and then bringing it back to the board for discussion and hopefully action on Tuesday the 15th of February. Be happy to answer questions at this time.
Can I start with Dr. Beers? Dr. Beers, you had comments around this this item, next year's calendar? You are muted, sir. There you go.
Yeah, I started to say, I'm sorry I got out of sequence there. It is hard sometimes to follow exactly where you are, but I really, and I wasn't able to attend a couple of these meetings, so I didn't really get a sense of where the teachers were on this, and maybe Kayla can tell us some more about that. But I felt, I was looking at it for several ways, but I thought that starting at the beginning of the week, either the 29th or the 22nd, would be more acceptable to parents who make plans to go for a week, do their vacations in the summer. And I always thought that it would be better to start at the beginning of the week, for school to start at the beginning of the week, than to start halfway through the week. And that's really, that was really the only, not even a concern, but it was just something that I thought about. I do like the idea of starting before Labor Day. There seems to be enough of a consensus there that supports that, but maybe Mr. Kiefer can give us, some thoughts about where the teachers come down on whether we start on the 24th or whether we start at the beginning of the week.
I'd be happy to. We had very good discussion within the committee around strengths of both of those ideas. I think that the idea of an earlier start was appreciated by teachers, as long as we could also then plan in some opportunity for job-embedded collaboration, planning, and collaborative learning. I think one of the challenges that started to come forward in our discussion was the idea that we did start earlier this year. We were also, I won't say late with our release of the calendar last year, but probably not as early as we wished to be. We didn't approve the calendar until March, second week in March, in fact. And the idea with perhaps staying on that first week or the week prior to Labor Day resonated with some committee members because they felt like people could sort of plan towards that, and that we may need to have a community conversation about how much earlier than the week prior to Labor Day that we continue to push. And one of the other strengths that people pointed out during the discussion was that the 829 version did allow for a number of job-embedded days to occur throughout the school year versus just simply early release days or front-loading those days in terms of the teacher contract.
If I could add, Dr. Beers, in terms of the teacher contract, if we were to start on August 24th, because we've early releases and not so many job embedded days that are finishing early, there would be a considerable number of teacher days up front for them to fulfill their 13 extra contractual days. So they would be back significantly earlier.
Okay.
Questions? Ms. Cook?
Yeah, I'd like to, so in terms of contract days, are you anticipating that this will impact the number of contract days with teachers, or would that stay the same? Just to shift the timing of the days?
We already have 13 extra days for teachers, so we do have enough extra contract days in their contract. It's how they're used. And the calendar that starts on the 29th allows us to distribute those throughout the year, which we never really have done, to allow for some planning, collaboration, and professional development. And all of the days built in could be any of those three or all of those three in some instances.
Thank you. And then when you do solicit feedback up until through the 10th, will you be able to determine whether that feedback is what family, student, teacher? Will you be able to ask that question so we'll be able to determine?
I think it's an open comment box, but I think we're able to determine who's providing the comment.
Yes, I think that would be helpful to be able to find out if it's
I think families,
from a parent,
families and staff in particular.
And then also, I in both versions, the end of the first semester is still the end of January. Is that correct?
There's about a week difference. There is the 824 version has the semester ending on the 20th of January, and the 829 version has it ending on the 26th.
Okay. I remain concerned about the growing number, hopefully continuing to grow number of students who do early college that second semester of senior year, and the impact that semester, the later that semester ends, the more that work they have to do to try to compensate for that time in January. So I remain concerned about that. And then I guess my last question is, between now hearing from us and then the feedback from the community, and when you come on February 15th, will you be making a recommendation between the two of these, Dr.
Yes,
Heron?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Still my question. Ms. Ortega.
Yeah, well, is the plan to release both calendars and ask people to comment on them, or are specific questions going to be asked?
It is really looking at both versions of the calendar and providing feedback.
Open-ended, not
Correct.
specific questions. Okay. Just my only comment, and of course the feedback from the community will matter more, but I would think that more teacher, we're calling CLP days, and fewer early release would probably be preferable. I would think early release is difficult for working families. So that would be my only thought. What they say.
Ms. Hummel?
Is there a strategic difference between one calendar and the other with regard to students taking some of their standardized tests in the spring?
Not necessarily, Ms. Hummel, just based on the way that the days fell out in that second semester. You could contend that we have 3 more instructional days in place before that occurs, that testing occurs. But as an example, AP testing is going to begin on that Monday, May 1st. And so unless we were to really go early in August, you're not going to see a tremendous difference over what we've already done this last year with going a full week earlier.
So if I'm a parent and I'm looking at the questionnaire or whatever it's going to look like that's sent to us, the community feedback, and I see you know, version 2.9 versus 2.4. Version 2.9 has 6 teacher work days, 6 early release days for elementary, 4, and then 6 again. I think I would want to know how are the early release days being utilized? You know, what happens on those days, and what's the benefit to those that are still at the workplace? How is it used?
Sure. 2 of those early release days at the elementary level are specifically designated for parent conference days. So that's 2 of those. There are, in essence, 4 days at the high school level at the end of the school year that are designated for exams. And then the other early release days are really around grade reporting and finishing off 9 weeks. So there would be one at the end of October that would allow for grades to be finalized at the end of marking period 1. There'd be another one, I believe, at the end of March, preceding spring break, for that same purpose. So that basically accounts for the early release days.
And so it's not additional hours for CLP, and those early release days is what I wanted to clarify.
That wouldn't necessarily be the intent, no, sir. And I think one of the things that as we talk sort of administratively about how best to designate and utilize those days, you'll note on the calendar that it says student holiday, and that's to signal to parents that students are not in school. The way we program out the days for staff, I think, is the next step of this puzzle that's not a part of the academic calendar.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, Ms. Ortega.
Dr. Heron, I think you said that the first version with the 29th start date allows you to distribute the teacher workdays better throughout the year. Can you, did I misunderstand that?
Yes, I think when Mr. Kiva was laying out the days, there were several full teacher work, planning, collaboration, and learning days distributed throughout the year, whereas in the earlier version, so that students could get out earlier, there were more early release days. And they are not easy to use for collaboration and planning and professional learning because the time frame is so short.
Okay, so that's basically what Mr. Dahl was saying. Okay.
Well, I think we all look forward to hearing what the community has to offer with this, and the recommendation that you bring back to us at our next meeting on the 15th. Thank you, Mr. Keever.
Thank you, and I just want to say that I really appreciate the committee's work and the diligence that they went about trying to put together some recommendations for us. So thank you.
How is that notice going out?
It would be great to see who was on the committee, by the way.
I'd be happy to provide that list.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 6.03, review the invitation for bid number 2022715, Berkeley Middle School HVAC replacement and roof. Dr. Heron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Snipes is here this evening to present several items to begin our preparations for work this summer and beyond. And the first one of those is for the Berkeley Middle School HVAC replacement. Mr. Snipes, over to you.
First of all, I want to say I'm glad to be back and thank you all for all your well wishes.
Great to have you back.
Appreciate the cards. And good evening, School Board Chair, School Board members, Dr. Heron, and to our 2 new members, Ms. Hunley and Ms. Ortega. You will see me often over the next couple of weeks in regards to capital improvement items that are coming up. So as I review these agenda items tonight, a number of them were approved in prior fiscal years. For example, CIP 19 and 20, and they were delayed due to the pandemic, so you're seeing them for the first time. Tonight's agenda item, which is the review of the information for bid number 2022715, the Berkeley Middle School HVAC replacement and roof repairs, and it supports Goal 6 of the strategic plan. The Berkeley partial roof replacement and HVAC replacements, again, were approved in the FY19 and FY22, respectively, for a total amount of $679,036. The current HVAC system was installed in 1998 and has reached the end of its useful life. The installation of the HVAC will take place in phases during the school years of 2022, 2023, and 2024. The project includes renovation of the HVAC system, replacing of roof areas, demolishing and connecting new mechanical equipment, some structural modifications to accommodate new roof openings, and then some electrical systems are being modified. An invitation for bid was issued on January 4th with a due date of February the 7th. And again, because at the time this item was prepared, the bid opening process had not been completed, this is a placeholder agenda item. The detailed vendor award information will be included on the February 15th, 2022, at the February 15th, 2022 board meeting. The FY22 capital improvement plan includes an additional $2,005,800 for HVAC replacement, and the division has also received a grant in the amount of $2,214,575 for this HVAC replacement project. Additional funds have been requested in fiscal year 23 for both projects. The superintendent recommends the board review the project information and be prepared to vote at the February 15th, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Snipes? So there are a lot of numbers there, and I'm seeing grants, and I'm seeing a grant that's exceeding the $2,500,000. What? I'm sorry. What are we actually paying outside of the grant? We're not discussing that yet. Is the RFP not closed?
I think
The bid process has not been completed as of yet.
Okay.
we do have a cost in the CIP over
Yeah.
3 years, and the 2 million takes about a third, I believe, of the cost.
$2 million takes about a third.
And that was the grant we applied for through the American
I
Rescue
see.
Plan.
I see. Thank you.
And we've already incorporated that into our CIP funds already.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Ortega?
Well, I know that this HVAC replacement was originally planned for in FY19. Will it now, especially now that we're in receipt of this grant, will it have anything to do with COVID mitigation in the schools?
We're always looking at indoor air quality, and of course that will improve indoor air quality in our schools when we upgrade our HVAC systems.
Specifically with regard to COVID spread and better in.
Each time we do an HVAC system, it meets our ASHRAE standards. So those ASHRAE standards do recommend that we do certain things for indoor air quality. So each time that'll be done. Yes. Did I answer your question?
I think it won't change what we're currently doing, Ms. Ortega. We've actually gone to great lengths to put special filters in every air conditioning system in every single school HVAC system, and we've got these kind of filters here in places where that's not possible. So this won't necessarily improve anything for COVID because we already have structures in place to mitigate COVID within the classroom.
Okay. All right. I think we're good there. Mr. Snipes, thank you so much, sir.
All right.
We'll move on to 604, review the invitation for 202-2656 James River Elementary School partial floor replacement. You're just going to stay there.
Yes, I'm just going to stay right here for about three more items, including this one. So, as you just mentioned, this is a review of the information for bid 202-2656, which is the James River Elementary School partial floor replacement. This also supports Goal 6 of the strategic plan, and the project was approved in the FY20 CIP in the amount of $294,920. It's the intent of this proposal to result in a competitive negotiation of a fixed price contract for flooring and tile replacements, which will include replacing portions of the existing floor, the resilient code base, and accessories in classrooms, administration area, cafeteria, library, and classroom wing corridors. The successful firm will demonstrate the proven management skills and technical competence in various aspects of school refurbishments with similar designs to James River. And information for bid was issued on January 4, 2022, with the due date of Thursday, January 27, 2022. But at the time this item was prepared, the bid opening process had not been completed, and so therefore this is a placeholder agenda item. The superintendent recommends the board review the project information and be prepared to vote at the February 15, 2022 meeting.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Snipes. So, how often what's the partial floor replacement schedule generally? If you could.
So we have recently changed our capital improvement plan to reflect that there is a 20-year replacement on floor tile. I will stand corrected. I believe it's 25 years on a floor tile. So traditionally we don't do a partial floor replacement, but because this was put in place during some years where the funding wasn't what we were expecting, we did partial. So what we'll be doing this time is going through selecting flooring in different classrooms, taking that out and installing tile.
I see. So you're doing entire classrooms at a time.
We're doing classrooms, in some areas in the in the
Right.
cafeteria, in some areas in the corridors.
And I think, you know, in the time that I've been on the board, I've observed you really put systems in place for maintenance of buildings, and I really appreciate that. And one of the shifts I've seen is towards partial refurbishments, partial replacements to be more, either in response to reduced funding or to be more efficient in the use of public dollars, which I appreciate. But one of the things that I always wonder about this is, you know, you're only replacing that which needs to be replaced, but if the next time you get the money to do it in the interim, something else needs to be replaced because it's not going to last another 20 years, what do we do? And I know our custodians sort of fill that gap by maintaining things beautifully, but anyway, I just always worry about these sort of partial replacements, partial refurbishments, because it makes me wonder about the parts that don't get replaced and whether they're going to make it to the next stage. So, but this is great. Just wanted to say that.
And you are correct. That is a concern. Our custodians and our maintenance staff do a great job of replacing tiles when they become broken or a slip trip hazard. But we also will make sure that sometimes we have funds left over, and we're able to ask in our year-end funds to be able to replace some tiles before June 30th. So we are able to do some things in the midterm.
Thank you.
So it's constantly under review, and one thing that will be taking place within the next year is an updated facility condition index, and I think that will take us back to relook at everything through fresh eyes again, and then reestablish our plan moving forward again. It's something we've done once as a system in my time, and it's time to begin that process again.
Thank you.
Other questions? Remarks? I appreciated the question from Ms. Cook, because as I'm hearing 20 to 25 years, and I can imagine the beating these floors take against all the effort that our custodial staff puts in to maintain them, it just seems almost impossible that they'd get even 18, 15 years out of it. So that to know that you know, individual tiles or sections of tiles are replaced as needed is helpful for us and for the community to know. I'm curious, what kind of warranty or guarantee do we get within a period of time when we do even a partial replacement? Is there any?
I'll get back with you with that
Okay.
answer, because I'm not sure that there is a warranty beyond the useful life of the product. For example, tile usually lasts 10 to 20 years depending on maintenance. So
I was thinking something like within the first 5 to X number of years, if there was a guarantee on that, where we wouldn't have to necessarily replace if it's just a question that came to mind.
I'll make sure we get you that answer.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Snipes. We'll move on and keep you there. 605, review the invitation for bid 2022652, interior refurbishment of Stonehouse Elementary School.
That is correct. And this review of IFB 2022652 also supports Goal 6 of the strategic plan, and is also a placeholder agenda item tonight. The project was approved in the FY20 CIP in the amount of $369,702. It is the intent of the invitation to result in competitive negotiation for a fixed price contract for the interior refurbishment of Stonehouse Elementary School, which includes removal and replaces of floor finishes and tiles, moisture mitigation of the concrete slab, and painting of some interior walls and door frames. An invitation for bid was issued on January 3rd, 2022, with the due date of January 31st, 2022. And again, at this time the item was prepared, the IFB process had not been completed. The superintendent recommends the board review the information and be prepared to award the Stonehouse refurbishment IFB at the February 15th, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Ms. Cook?
When I hear taking paint to Stonehouse, and then I think about those this one, the beautiful murals are gonna, okay, good, thank you.
The murals will stay. It will be mostly touch-up. It will be mostly touch-up paint. And as you're aware, sometimes in the cafeteria, we have to go along the walls and repaint because kids stand on the wall. So mostly touch-up paint, but mostly the cafeteria.
Ms. Hummel?
This is kind of a general question, since all of these, we don't have any real bids for any of these, and yet we're going to be asked to vote on them as action items on the 15th.
by the time the 15th comes around, you will have, and we will know what the bids were and who bidded on them and how much those bids were.
Okay, so all of us just will be looking for all of those bids to come in.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that
then-
information will be for your review prior to the 15th. It'll go out into board docs on the Thursday before and allow the board to review the information before voting on the 15th.
Okay, thanks. Is that typical? I mean, is
Yes, ma'am.
that a typical?
That's our
I'm
normal
just trying to
procedure.
remember
Yeah.
whether that's, okay.
We
It's
haven't
been a
done a
while.
lot of these for a
I
while.
know,
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Because it's a placeholder agenda item, and when we
Okay.
prepare the item, we don't know what the bid results are.
Right.
When the bid results come in, we place them in executive content or administrative content, so you can review them before
Okay,
the
and
next
just
meeting.
because of the 2-week break, we
Right.
Right.
still take action on them, so we can, okay.
Yeah, it's
It
a
has
it's a
been a
heads
while.
up, it's a placeholder, right?
Right.
So a lot of boards don't do this two-part process. They
Okay.
just see it the first time and then vote on it that same time. So this is a way to,
Like,
yeah, just give the public information, us information. So
giving us
yeah, we drag it out a
advance
little
notice
longer
that,
than most.
okay. Thank you.
I just have one comment, and I know you all have checked this out, but the products that we're buying for flooring and stuff are up to code. I mean, because now it just seems like everybody's making things cheaper, and I just have a concern that we are getting the best flooring and not something that, you know what I'm saying? Like plastic, everything seems to be, we think it's great quality, and it's gone down due to us being able to get things. And
Yeah, that's always concern whenever we purchase products. And then with an IFB, an invitation for bid, you put out the specs for the product, and they have to
Okay.
meet that spec.
okay.
So.
Ms. Ortega?
There's no concern that announcing the fact that we have the grant will influence bids that come in, right?
Okay.
Ms. Ortega was saying, will the fact that there's a grant towards that will influence the bid for the actual project?
Are we going back to the Berkeley?
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you whether that will impact the, how much the bid is, because they know, as a vendor, you know you are competing against others. So you always want to put your best foot forward, and because regardless of what you know the budget could be, someone could always put a bid in that's better than yours.
Ms. Cook?
Yeah, and I would just add that our CIP is also public, right? So they always know how, like, what's in the budget. So whether it's a grant or, so yeah, it's a dance. Yeah.
Just so you're aware and the board's aware, we have tracked bids for the last 10 years to see what the bids came in as based on the budget, and they are usually under budget. The bid is usually under budget. The only time there's been higher is when there's been situations when there's been a supply chain issue.
Okay, let us move to 6.06, review purchase requests for playground upgrades for Byrd Baker, Laura Lane, and Norwich Elementary Schools.
Okay, so this is my final agenda item for tonight. And this is for the review and the purchase request for playground upgrades at Byrd Baker, Laura Lane, and Norwich Elementary School. The project includes funding approved in the FY20 CIP in the amount of $90,000 and the FY22 CIP in the amount of $100,000. Typical playground upgrades include replacing aging and rusted swings, climbing features and other equipment, improving access, borders, and safety surfacing, and adding ADA and inclusive playground features. We will be doing multiple things at all of the facilities at Byrd Baker, Laura Lane, and Norwich. A detailed scope of work was included for quotes for this. It was not an IFB, so that's why this is a purchase request. And it was issued on January 19th to 4 playground vendors who have done work for Wjcc schools in the past. The 4 vendors are under annual contract with Williamsburg, James City County Schools. This is a placeholder agenda item again, because at the time the item was prepared, all the vendor quotes had not yet been completed, and the detailed vendor award information will be included at the February 15th, 2022 agenda. Funding for the project, again, is about $190,000. The funding that is available for this project is $142,000 after we have done some designs and some other items.
Ms. Hummel?
What are freestanding music features?
Ms. Hunley might be able to answer that a little better.
They're usually like, it'll have a drum set, like plastic drums that the kids could beat on, or it'll have bells that you can, it's just built into the structure of the playground equipment.
And do our kindergarten teachers ever like do things with those music
Well,
features?
we've never had them at any school I've been at. I've seen them at other schools, so, but I've seen children use them and play with them.
Thanks.
I've been one of those adults that's played with them. They're a lot of fun.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Snipes.
Thank you.
I do appreciate your hard work with this and answering some probably pretty simple questions for you, but helping us wrap our minds around it. Thank you, sir.
Not good. Thank you guys for all your well wishes.
Good to have you back. We'll move on to 6.07, review purchase request for academic and career planning system. Dr. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Walter's here to talk about this item tonight. It actually was something that were working towards the purchase of 2 years ago and put it on hold because of COVID. But it's an incredible resource for our students, and Ms. Walter will tell us a little bit about it.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. Tonight, I'm here to present to you information regarding the request to purchase an academic and career planning system to use in support of secondary students across the division. With this information shared with you tonight, we are asking for your approval for the purchase of this system. Currently, Williamsburg, James City County does not have a software system to use in supporting students with academic planning, career exploration, and college and career readiness. While Wjcc school counseling teams have been resourceful in using online systems and documents created within the division, these limited resources are no longer serving the needs of our school community. With that, we put together a team of individuals from school counselors, the division career coach, technology, and instructional technology to define our needs and requirements for a system that would best support the needs of our secondary students and families and the work of the Wjcc school counselors, teachers, and staff. RFP 2022-221 was released July 30th, 2021 and closed on August 30th, 2021. We received 5 proposals, which were reviewed by the RFP committee, and the top 4 vendors were invited to provide demonstrations to an expanded review committee, which also included the Wjcc transition specialist. School Links was selected as the most comprehensive and cost-effective vendor. The cost for purchase is $39,173 for the first year, which includes initial training of all staff and license fees. The follow-up costs for years 2 to 10 are outlined in the chart provided, which includes an annual 3% increase after year 2. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sure there are questions. No? Yes, Ms. Cook?
So what's the cumulative price? I just haven't
For
had
year 1,
cumulative.
let me look at my chart.
Yeah, because I'm just not able to do the math in my head, and it's the first time I've seen it, so.
Probably around 400,000.
Is that what it is?
I don't have a total, but if I can grab a calculator, I can get one to you before the end of the night.
It's fine.
For
Just
10 years.
Just by the 15th would be good.
Goes up about 1,100 every year, so 1,100 to 1,200.
The first time I've opened this, so. That's all I had, thank you.
Outlined in the chart. So there's a chart.
There is, it's
Yes.
Attachment.
Price proposal form?
Oops, sorry.
Attachment C.
Attachment C. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ortega?
Yeah, is this something that would be utilized by every student in high school, every student in middle school and high school, or
Grades 6 through 12.
6 through 12?
Every student would have a personal account, a personalized account, and parents would also have their own portal to access that.
And how often would a student be interacting with this throughout a given school year? Was this a one-time thing, or specific times, or throughout?
The ideal would be multiple times throughout the year. The program does everything from career exposure to career exploration to even learning styles. Moving into the high school years, it can also support students with writing resumes, applying to colleges, doing their actual applications within the system.
Okay.
Students can submit teacher letter of recommendation requests for their college applications through the system, and then they can be submitted to the college through that. They can submit transcript requests. So it really is a comprehensive system that does much more than just career exploration. It will also speak to our program of studies, and students will be able to develop their academic and career plan in partnership with their school counselor using the online system instead of the paper and pencil method we have now, which really does help in making it that fluid document that can change throughout the years as they grow and develop as students.
So what is it, can you summarize what it's like now?
So currently, school counselors use online systems such as ONET, which is a career interest inventory system. It does also provide videos and information about different careers and how you can get to those. We use Virginia Wizard. We have it's also available in the front of the program of studies. We have a paper version of the academic and career plan, which starts in the 7th grade with students. And then that plan is updated annually in partnership, with the school counselor. And what that plan does, which is a state requirement, is works with the students to identify their future goals and the academic pathways that we offer here and what they need to do after they graduate to achieve those goals.
And that's currently done for every student starting at 7th grade.
Starting in 7th grade. 4th grade, we start what's called the Academic and Career Plan Portfolio, which is a lot about exposure for students in 4th grade. And in that, they use ONET in elementary school currently, and they build a portfolio also with the teacher and the school counselor of samples that they're already doing in class to identify and review their own work that doesn't necessarily have to be related to a certain profession, but it is examples of their writing ability. But this program would just work with secondary students at this time.
Ms. Cook?
What other school divisions use this product?
Do
you know that?
We do have a list. So, sorry. They are in Virginia. I need to go to the proposal from the memo, sorry. Okay, Richmond Public Schools has a current contract with, do you want just Virginia or do you want any?
Yes, please.
Okay. That is the identified one from the proposal because they also look at size and proximity. I can share that School Links, while fairly new, is becoming a larger presence in the state, and there are others who are in this current process as well who have identified School Links on their short list.
I have one question. So if I'm a parent of a middle schooler and he has like 6 teachers and I'm really excited about this.
Sure.
I'm going to contact the teachers, like all 6, and say, have you looked, I'm working on his portfolio online. Am I contacting all 6 teachers to help if I have questions, or am I just contacting the school counselor?
The school counselor would be the point of contact for this, yes.
Ms. Hummel?
So I'm a senior and I'm applying to college, and in the past I would work with the school's registrar to order transcripts through Parchment. Are you saying that with this, the control of that is on the student, or that they can actually send out transcripts from Parchment?
It still goes through the counseling office,
okay,
but they
but the
can
record?
request it through School Links.
And then can School Links actually, so as a parent, I could go in and go, okay, those are the 5 universities and you sent Parchment, I've got proof that it's been sent out and it's all in the School Links site, or is it?
So as I've been told, yes, it can all live in the School Links site, but there is
ownership on part of the student for how much they interact with the system to be able to say, yes, it's been done, yes, it's been done.
So the student has to be trained also.
Yeah, yes. Everyone will need training.
Everyone will.
So staff will be trained, and then I don't know that I'd call it training for the students as much as educated on how the system can support them and what they're doing.
And what happens with the student that doesn't go on at all? Who's alerted to?
We are able to run reports to see who is accessing the system and who's not. Yes.
All right.
So to go.
What is the measurable goal that we would be able to see after year 1, after year 5, after year 10? What are we trying to achieve with this?
I think the ultimate goal would be that all students are engaging with the software, with the system. We will be able to track not just who logs in, but what sort of assessments they've completed. So counselors will be able to go in, if we're working with 7th graders, for example, to complete career interest assessments. We will be able to run a report within School Links to say 98% of our students have done it. And as a counselor, I can identify who those 2% are that haven't, so I can meet with them individually or in a small group to help them access it and make sure that they don't have any questions, and so we can use that as a kickoff point. So the goal would be for this system to provide a consistent platform for students and staff to access these great resources for future planning, which includes just middle to high school transition.
Okay, so the immediate goal is a greater ability to track with the students how they're interacting. Are we expecting that there will be a higher number of job placements after high school from this, or college? I mean, are we expecting it to influence the employability of the students after high school?
We're expecting to make sure that students have access to the information and the knowledge on a greater level than they do at this point. The system is also designed to be interactive in a way that aligns with what students their age are typically interactive with online, so the assessment isn't necessarily what we might be used to in a pick one of these. It says swipe here for this, and it's more engaging to their developmental level and what they're used to on the platforms that they typically engage with as teenagers. So the ultimate goal is that they are more aware of their own path and the resources and opportunities available to them, not just in WJCC, but afterwards as well.
Right, so helping identify interest and letting them see what's out there, and being able to also track who is interacting with that so that counselors can then supplement as needed.
Yes, that helps us support. So counselors would deliver this to the students. We would use it in lessons that we do with them already, but this will enhance that process.
Okay.
Can you talk just a little bit more about if the students take the learning style test, how could that be used? Because that's very important, knowing their learning style. Was that something that would be shared with the teacher, or why would we even have that feature? How's it going to be expanded?
Sure. So that information can be used in a wide variety of ways. As a student, I could learn how I best learn and can approach my studies in that way as well. But also when working on maybe an IEP, or a case manager might be working with it, or a transition specialist might be working with a student, that is often information that can be valuable in working individually with a student. IEP or no IEP, that can be helpful when trying to support a student academically.
So automatically, if a child goes to IEP, somebody would be responsible for saying, can you look in to see if the student has filled out this portion that will be needed for our meeting?
I wouldn't say automatically. I would say that could be a component of our work with our students individually, whether you have a case manager or you don't. It's just an added benefit.
Ms. Cook.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm pleased that you're looking into this, because I think if we can make better connections between interests and abilities and learning styles, and then making that actionable to course selection, and then having that somehow assist with the process of what happens after high school, whether it's college, 2-year, 4-year, or work. You know, so I mean, I definitely see room for improvement there, and so I see this as a potential avenue towards that. But I'm also, you know, sort of concerned about, or I guess I'm wondering, you know, if I know we're aiming to increase the number of counselors, but you know, sometimes these things are just one more thing that you have to learn and do. And so so if it has actionable and makes sort of measurable improvements, as Ms. Ortega was sort of alluding to, in sort of systems and how kids interact with their counselors and interact with their own coursework and interact with their thinking about beyond high school, which, you know, kids that age lack executive function, generally speaking, and so that's a tough sell in the first place, right? So anyway, I hope I hope it improves the system. I appreciate your looking at it, but I think that's sort of why I have a lot of questions, because having experienced it recently, you know, it's a little clunky, and the counselors are clearly overwhelmed. I mean, they're just, there's too many kids for them to work with to be able to sort of make those connections between interest and class selection and then post graduation. So if that's going to improve that, that'd be great.
Yes, so this system, counselors are already doing these things. This system can streamline this and make their jobs, it will just, it's a big support for them. So not looked at as one more thing. And the counselors that we've talked to, they can't wait to have a system like this to support what they do.
Thank you. Ask one more?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hummel.
With any kind of a 10-year program like this, do we build in, like at year 3, year 7, year whatever, kind of are we actually using this, or is this actually worth continuing? Like what happens when we have these big 10-year contracts and then we find 5 years later we're not using it, or it didn't do what we thought? Do we do that, and then is there a exit clause if we find this is just not what we were promised, or for whatever reason we're not using it, or something better's come along that's less expensive? I don't know. Might be.
Yep, I think the process, specifically with this product, is it's a 2-year contract, and then there's options for annual renewal after that, up to 10 years. So at any time we could decide it's a product that we don't need. And I think, interestingly, we're going to talk later on about, in the budget discussion, about a data analyst and program evaluation and things like that. So this is a typical example where you could have someone go in and do a quick analysis and actually question whether the product is producing what it was supposed to or not, or whether it has a number of students actually involved with it. And then that would lead to a strategic decision as to whether to continue the product or not.
Thanks.
Let me get to Dr. Beers here first, and then Ms. Ortega. You're muted, sir. Dr. Beers, you're muted.
I am muted.
There you go.
I think I'd like to echo some of the comments that Ms. Cook made and I think what's really important here is it's important to maintain the kind of technology that we need in order to better serve students, and also the guidance counselors. I think this is a really helpful way of streamlining and helping the guidance counselors work more efficiently, accomplish more, and I also like the idea that students are very much connected to that, and it's like a lot of technology, which is we need it. It's like we don't want to fall behind. We want our students to have the greatest chance, the kinds of materials and and in this case, software that helps them sort of work their way through a variety of careers and what they need to do, and I just I think it's just really important. We're never going to get, when we talk about individualized, we're never going to get enough counselors for every single kid. So this is a way, I think, of helping those counselors with tools that not just help them, but help the students as well. I really support this.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. Ms. Ortego?
Oh, yes. Are there divisions or reviews that have done this and can say, you know, we had this many kids that were able to, go directly into a specific field that they would not have done without it, or?
So we did reach out and to the references provided by School Links. The feedback was that this has been a positive system. They've demonstrated a clear desire, they being School Links, to provide a quality product and service to be able to grow. Satisfaction across the board from the references contacted, both with the platform and that School Links themselves has provided excellent support and an ability to work as a partner with their clients. So they're very responsive in their services. So glowing reviews.
So as I've listened to the questions and your answers, and I think a lot of the questions drive to what we get at the start of the year, which is that portrait of a graduate. I wonder, with those references and those contacts that you've made, those that have used this program, what are those measurables? What are the numbers? Have evidence of graduations improved since using this? And maybe not in that first year, but once they get into year 3, 4, 5, as they've continued with the program, how have they improved, measurably speaking? And then again, those that aren't on the pathway for college, but maybe they are off into the career of their own outside of college. Are those noted? Can we touch something that we can say, yeah, we can aim for that as we look at our portrait of graduate. And then a question that I have is why School Links? So 5 submitted a proposal or a bid, 4 were invited, and School Links rose to the top. What impressed the committee about School Links?
I think multiple things. I can pull the average scores from all participants. They scored very high on the ease of use, selected staff, and parent account administration. It's a very user-friendly platform. We wanted something that wouldn't just be engaging for students, but that would help the counselors be more efficient in their work, but also be something that a parent can log in and easily understand, or with minor guidance understand what they're looking at. So it scored very high on that from all evaluators. The comprehensive resources available for the wide variety of careers, including outlook for potential employment across the nation, to be able to really see, if I go into this, what could that look like for me? Will I be able to find a job? That scored also very high as a committee. The portfolio that can be created by students that could provide samples of work that they can pull in from their English courses. So sample writing documents. It can provide, they can store their resume in there. They can store a wide variety. The ease of use for that and the intention that we want it to be also scored very high. So those were the 3 highest areas. But to be very clear, they scored high across the board on the evaluation from all members. They had very they didn't have anything that was a low score, where other companies might have had some components of that evaluation that were just lower. They weren't meeting what we wanted as a committee.
And how long have they been providing the service?
They have been in place for...
My last question, I promise.
That's okay. I have it here, but I don't want to misspeak, so I want to make sure I have it right. I want to say 4 years, but let me... get that exact number for you. Here we go. It's been in place since 2015.
Okay.
So 6 years.
6 years. Thank you.
Almost 7, I guess now, since for a month.
Thank you. All right. Any last questions or comments from my colleagues? All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Walter, for the information. We look forward to, I guess, more discussion at our next meeting. Thank you so much. All right. 6.08, review amendment to the fiscal year 22 grants fund budget. Dr. Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, Ms. Ewan is going to just bring information on adding funds to our grants funds budget. Ms. Ewan.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This agenda item this evening is to amend our grants fund budget to reflect an additional grant that we have been awarded under the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund 2 for social emotional learning in the amount of $100,000. The funds will be used to support the creation and implementation of professional learning opportunities for school counselors, MTSS teams, and teachers to enhance Tier 1 practices to strengthen academic instruction, school culture, and student success. With the addition of this grant, it will bring our total grants fund budget for this fiscal year to $23,110,984. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions at all? Ms. Ortega.
And I just have a question, and this is probably because I'm still so new. That's a very large grant budget, the 23 plus. What are we doing with that now?
This is a very large budget for this current year because in this current year we've been awarded over $11 million under the American Rescue Plan, $4.9 million under the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act.
Right.
So we're using it to fund positions. We used it for trailers this year, and we're planning to in March, bring a presentation to share additional information regarding those funds to the board.
Because I imagine most of this has to go to some sort of coronavirus response.
Correct.
And that response is very broad. It could be, some of the mitigation things and cleaning and filters, air filters and things like that in our schools. But it also includes a portion dedicated to instruction and remediation of students because of COVID-19. So we had planned next month to start to lay out what we've spent so far of the grant funds and what is still remaining to be spent. I don't know if the rest of the board recalls or not, we had a public comment piece where we went out to the public and asked for input, and we formed committees to decide where we would spend the 11 million grant, which was the biggest portion of the grant funds, and then use that to then develop our plan for the spending of the grant. But for example, we have 8 teachers, we have counselors, we have special ed teachers, we have all of our temporary subs in every building this year that have kept us alive are all funded by that grant. But we'll get you a bigger picture and more information probably once we've presented our normal budget and Ms. Ewing gets through that. Then we're going to turn to grant funds and try to really look at what's been spent and what still needs to be spent.
Okay. Because we have a sub shortage, right, and teacher shortage.
We do have a sub shortage, and because of that, we use grant funds this year to hire a temporary sub in every building, a TA position. You've seen those coming through our improvement of positions. And we have 2 of those at every single school right now. And when someone's absent, subs are used first. And where we can't get subs, then they're put into action in the classroom. And then after that, we go to other positions in the school covering for absentee teachers and aides. So they're a huge part of our survival over the last 2 months.
Okay, and once, you know, the teacher workforce comes back, because we can expect that even those that were out of this during this last surge will eventually all be back. Those will be still used for just additional remedial instruction for kids who are behind?
Well, at the moment, those are paid for in the grant, and when the grant goes away, one of the biggest questions we will ask is what's the added value of keeping those positions, and should we bring them into the budget? We're going to talk about a data analyst position later in the budget. And for example, I would probably ask that person to do an analysis for me. How much do we normally spend on substitute teachers per year? How much are we spending on these positions plus benefits? And which is the most effective way to move forward to rebuild our school, our sub pool, or create permanent positions in the system? And so a data analyst could really analyze all of that to help us make a very strategic decision to whether to bring those positions back into the operating budget or not. Just one typical example.
Ms. Hunley.
I was just wondering if with the social emotional learning, is there any ways some of those funds could look into the teen suicide? We are hearing a lot about that. Is there any way a committee, some of that money could be earmarked towards that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Would this be something that some of this grant fund money could be earmarked to looking into the teen suicides or suicides in general, young people? Is that related? Some people are saying it's related to Corona, some say not. Just wondering if that's a possibility.
So as far as our work in the schools, we wouldn't be doing, and I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I just want to bet, we wouldn't be doing any research into that, but we are providing programs and support related to that at the high school level. It hasn't happened yet this year, but it is in the works. So this particular, we have other funds that are paying for programs that help with awareness related to suicide.
Okay.
Yeah, this particular grant is not earmarked for that, but yes, we are. That is important for us in our system. Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. Dr. Herron, I know that we were aware of emails that we've received asking if there were the mask mandate was tied to being approved for this grant. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, this grant, all of our grant funds, they are not tied to any of specific actions or strategies that we're using in our system to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. The funds can be used for those measures, but they are not attached to it. We do not have to do any specific mandates, such as a mask mandate. That's not required for any of these funds.
Thank you. I thought that was important for the public to hear because that's been a hot button issue, and I know it's been important to them. So thank you for answering that for the viewing audience. Are there any other questions from the board for Ms. Renee Ewing? Ms. Ewing, sorry. It's like, I know it. Ms. Ewing. All right. Thank you, Ms. Ewing. Thank you, Ms. Walter. All right. 7.01, WJCC Schools Foundation Annual Status Report. I want to kick this over to Ms. Hummel.
Here she is. I am so happy to announce Miss Penny Pulley, who's here to give the annual report on what WJCC Foundation has done for our school system, and maybe some quick glimpse into the future. So.
Well, thank you, Chair Dow, Dr. Herron, School Board. Thanks for having me. As the chair of the Schools Foundation Board of Directors, I want to provide an update on the status of the foundation. In your board packet, you should have received the most recent annual impact report, and it has many encouraging facts about our fundraising and lots of exciting examples of the ingenuity teachers bring to the classroom through Schools Foundation grants. To date, the Schools Foundation has awarded 140 grants to 248 teachers, covering all WJCC schools and grade levels, totaling over $221,000. Just prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the WJCC Schools Foundation had the most successful year since its inception in 2015. The number of grants more than doubled from the year before, and the maximum grant amount doubled too, from $2,000 to $4,000. In 2021, we had to pause because of the upheaval we all experienced, particularly schools, during the pandemic. But just because we didn't offer a grant award season last year doesn't mean we weren't working. We still contacted our donors to keep them up to date and received donations. We also upgraded our website to provide a better platform for donors, teachers, and any citizen to be able to see the grants at work and to highlight the effects the grants have had on our students. We are better equipped to receive online donations, and we developed an online application form designed to greatly simplify the grant application and review process for all concerned. In 2022, we have opened up the grant applications and concluded for the month of January, we accepted grant applications. The open period ended on January 31st, and we already know that we have had fewer applications than in the past, but it is understandable given that teachers are really working to keep classrooms safe, and they are still trying to assess their students' current needs after so many disruptions. The WJCC Schools Foundation will review the new grant applications this month in February and award funds to the grant winners in March. We will keep you posted on the distribution of grant funds to teachers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pooley. Can I open it up to the board? Any questions or comments for Ms. Pooley?
I just have a comment, just saying thank you. When I was teaching 3 years in a row, I put the, grant application in, and my husband was happy because the amount of money teachers spend out of their own pockets. So I just want to encourage teachers, if you haven't done it this year, definitely the process is easy, and please do it. And I want to be on the bus whenever we get on the bus to go to award teachers.
Yes,
Count me in.
Yes, I do remember your very creative, innovative ideas for your classrooms, and those were great.
Did I see Ms. Ortega?
No.
No, I'm sorry. Ms. Cook.
Ms. Pulley, I just want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your leadership of this wonderful board and organization. And I just marvel at what you do every year, and I think about what this will be like in 20 years. It's remarkable where it's gone in the last, 5 years, and I think it's just going to keep going in the right direction. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I want to throw my thanks in too. I work on the board. I'm the school board representative on the foundation, and I kind of see the behind. I think both Dr. Heron and I have been at the meetings. We see the dedication of your committees, all the different people that work together to raise the money, to celebrate the teachers who win the grants, to evaluate all the grants and award the grants. It's a complicated endeavor, and you do it so well. So I just wanted to thank WJCC Foundation for all they do for our kids and for our teachers.
Yeah, I often remember my first meeting with you guys, and getting on the bus and going all across town to award teachers and some very surprised teachers, and it was very moving experience, opportunity to be a part of, and but I often think about your team and the work that you guys do, and just from that, just how instrumental the foundation is for the success, the continued success of our teachers, and to say that's a shot in the arm that you guys give them, I don't think really does it justice. Especially, I mean, when we see the tears in their eyes when they've been approved for something that they really, really feel passionately about, and being able to think outside the box and make it happen, and somebody else believing in them too. So anyway, I really greatly appreciate the foundation, your work, and the work of your colleagues, and just really appreciate you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I do hope that it is understood that we are the conduit from the community to support the teachers and support the school division. It's, ultimately everybody in our communities, the support of the schools. And I think we reflect the fact that the majority of our citizens really want to have input and support for the teachers and the school division.
Yeah.
So.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pooley.
Alrighty, bye now.
All right, 7.02 fiscal year 2023 operating budget. Dr. Hare.
Thank you,
Mr. Dow, before we.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can I read a disclosure?
Oh, yes, please.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to read this and then also comment that I should have read this previously during our work session. So, Ms. Aller, if I could just respectfully ask you to note that in the minutes, that I should have done that before, I'd appreciate that. But I'd just like to say, as a member of the School Board of Williamsburg, James City County, I acknowledge that I have an interest in the fiscal year 23 school budget because I'm an employee of the Williamsburg Health Foundation. However, I believe that I'm able to participate in the consideration of and vote on the budget fairly and in the public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but is there anybody else? Ms. Hunley?
Do I read the same?
I don't know.
Is that a no?
There's been no advice, right?
Oh.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've got a very short presentation and an update with information that we talked about at the previous discussion work sessions. And also at your table tonight, there's answers to questions that were raised at the previous work session to help you understand what we're doing and why we're doing things with regard to the budget. So I hope those are helpful tonight, and I believe Mr. Walker's going to start very quickly and talk about a position that I've actually mentioned a couple of times already this evening, the data analyst position, and what that might look like in our school division should we want to move that way this year.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. As a follow-up from the previous January budget workshop, we're bringing forward additional information for your consideration this evening. Currently, we do not have a dedicated WJCC position that is focused on analyzing data for the division or the various departments, conducting research and/or program evaluations, or conducting a cost-benefit analysis on programs and positions impacting overall division needs. We are requesting your consideration for a new position, Data Analyst and Research Evaluation Coordinator. This much-needed position would work collaboratively with all departments by providing a consistent framework and internal support to help the division make key decisions aligned to the strategic plan. Some current examples include data analysis supporting academic achievement and also looking within our individual department needs. For example, within the operations department, analyzing the data for on-time bus reporting, or the analysis of electric buses versus diesel buses, or determining the energy analysis of our school buildings, geothermal versus traditional, or determining absenteeism and ridership with its impact in relation to on-time percentages. Another example could be within the Department of Student Services and looking at the percentage of students found eligible for support services and the impact on staffing across the division. Or potentially, another example, the cost-benefit analysis of continuing with our site-based substitutes assigned at each of our 16 schools. We bring that information forward, very brief, but for your consideration. Thank you. And prior to Mr. Baker sharing additional information regarding healthcare, we'll pause there for any potential questions.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Ortega?
I just start off with the way I'm approaching all of these new topics. How is this being done now? I know we have a lot of wonderful professionals in our division, so I'm not suggesting that it's not being done at all or well, but who's doing these analyses now?
Many departments are sharing in that responsibility to the best of our ability. We do have a partnership with Hanover Research that we contract each year, which can support us some, but when you're not having an internal person that knows our workings in WJCC, it's a bit more difficult with that partnership.
And what is the cost of the contract with Hanover?
Oh goodness, I want to say roughly $40,000 for that contracted service.
Ms. Hummel?
Yeah, so for a position like this, when I see this, I'm looking at what is happening now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a very, very distributed process of analyzing programs, analyzing just very distributed, like across the whole system, depending on different situations. And what I'm assuming this position is to be the expert at bringing it all together. So you've got a lot of data, obviously, in lots of different databases all over the place.
Correct.
And you need someone that has the training, the ability to work within different databases, to run programming that can tie the different databases together, run analysis on multiple different databases using Tableau, using SQL, MySQL, Alteryx, all of the kind of visualization tools and the analytic tools, the programming tools that a professional data analyst would be able to bring to this division. So that's what I am when I see this, and this is why it costs $100,000.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a highly specialized. I would be very interested in seeing what the job description is outlined, because it would be a position that would be high level. I mean, it's a high level. I would be wondering, who does this position report to? Does it report to Mr. soon-to-be Dr. Keever? Where does this fall in the org chart? And am I correct in what I'm saying?
Absolutely. We have everyone's got a certain skill set, and we do analyze data, obviously, but not with the skill set that a trained data analyst would do, who could be reviewing and become knowledgeable about every single database, and even identifying the data we don't have and need to have. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think initially the position would reside within accountability research evaluation. We have one coordinator in that department right now who not only does analysis of student data, but runs our whole major testing program for the school division. One person.
And are there positions like this in comparable school systems?
Yes, we are actually looking at some of the job descriptions in school divisions. In really large school divisions, they probably have an analyst attached to every department. In smaller school divisions, they would have a larger accountability presence within the school system.
Ms. Cook?
Yeah, I'm curious if you've done any benchmark. So I think this is, in my 7 years on the board, I think this is something that we would benefit from. I think it could directly impact student achievement over time, and particularly the allocation of resources to that end. And so I see this as an opportunity to really up our game. But I am curious if other school divisions our size have these positions, just so we can, justify it. But even if really only larger school divisions do, I still think this is important here, because primarily because We do have an economically bifurcated community, and we see pretty significant achievement gaps as a result of the student population that we have. So overall, our averages are very, very strong, but that masks significant disparities and gaps that I think can be pretty swiftly overcome with strategic allocation of resources based on data analysis. In my view, that's my observation over the last 7 years. So.
It really just needs to be a high-level person to be able to take up,
agree
because it cannot be like a data entry person who's been promoted to I mean, this is a level that is, for it to truly be effective, it has to be someone who has the right skill set to be able to to work within multiple databases, to clean data, to transfer data, to run the report. I mean, there's just a whole lot to it, and
and set up tools for people in individual departments to analyze their own data,
dashboards,
to set up systems and training to help people better understand. So they're not just the only one analyzing data, but setting up systems to extract from databases and then analyze data. Yeah.
So before we get to Dr. Byrd, that what you two are discussing is one of my questions. So we see what our anticipated salary, including benefits, would be for this individual. What are the anticipated support systems that we would provide, or that person? So have we had that conversation?
We would want to look for a person that has a lot of the talent and skills acquisition and training already. We're not going to train someone on the job. We want someone to bring that expertise to us to really help us to think more strategically with the use of data. You know, for example, our technology experts can pull data on attendance and everything, but there's no one sitting there to begin to analyze it and really give us some key ways to use it to our advantage, especially in staffing, as Ms. Cook said.
Those systems that are being shared amongst many people to analyze data, are those going to be appropriate for this individual, or will we need to take it up a notch for this individual?
Could you want to ask the question again?
I don't know what kind of systems are being used by those that are sharing the responsibility of analyzing data and then pushing it out to the various groups or departments. Whatever those systems are or look like, will that be appropriate for somebody who's hired with this level of expertise?
Yes, I think the person would have to really become familiar with every database we have, whether it's in finance or HR or in student achievement. They would have to become very familiar, if they don't have that knowledge already, with the kinds of data we have, and would have to have access to all of that. It's an incredible. It has to be a higher level position in terms of an administrative role, so that they actually could have access to all of those systems as well.
So we're always looking at improving and making things better. Earlier we talked about academic and career planning system to make something better that we're already doing. That's kind of what I'm getting at. The things that we're already using, will we be looking at purchasing other highly operable systems? Or
I think we'd have to have an expert come on board and tell us what we're lacking and what that
That's
person
what I was curious.
needs to be fully functional in their job. I don't think we'd buy anything until we had an expert guiding us from within to say, what do we need to put all this together? I mean, I think the opportunity is definitely there, and we're ready for it.
Okay, that's what I was curious. Okay, thank you. Dr. Byrd? Got you again. Dr. Byrd? Yeah.
Okay. Let me say just a couple of things. First of all, I'm somewhat familiar with the whole process of doing assessment and evaluation, data collecting, analysis. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that it isn't that necessary that you know everything about every subject or topic that somebody brings forward data. What's more important is having the tools knowing how to use them, knowing how to gather data, deciding what's more, what is important data, whether you disaggregate or you aggregate, however you do it. And I think this position is way overdue. There is so much that needs to be looked at, and I think what makes it really hard now is you have a number of different individuals that are looking at their particular area, but you really need somebody to help guide those that are involved in whether it's instruction, whether it's assessment, whatever it might be, to oversee that. You need a head. You need somebody who sort of looks at all the data and makes some sense of it. But I think, Mr. Chairman, you just mentioned that one system that we were looking at tonight. There are so many systems at work here, many of which involve technology, not all of them, but they all generate data. And we have many more of those now than, say, we did 10, 15 years ago. And I think it's absolutely critical that we have a full-time person like this. And I will also go out, I will also venture to say that not only this individual, that individual is going to need staff. It isn't a case of one person coming in and doing all of this stuff. We know how hard it is. Just talk to the people that are doing it now. Many school divisions, a number of which are smaller than ours, have full-time people whose their sole job is the gathering of data related to programs, related to academic progress, whatever it might be. And that's what they do all day long. They're just gathering, and I think really, and I'll finish with this, is there's three questions. Always when you begin to think about, well, what kind of data are we gonna look at? And how are we gonna look at it? And those are, where are we now? Where do we wanna be? And how do we get there? And once we get there, how do we know that it is what we want it to be? And that's all about data and gathering the data, and they're relatively simple questions, but the answers require an awful lot of work in gathering of that data. I think the one thing I am concerned, not concerned, I don't know enough about the intricacies of the overlapping and the interaction between the various software programs we have, but at some point, they're gonna have, maybe they are talking to each other now, but at some point, that's gonna become really important that when you select a platform or you select a program, it's how friendly is that program going to do, a platform going to be with all of those other different kinds of data. So I think, I haven't said much tonight, but I just think this is it's so important. It really is. But I also would say that, and we may have, I don't want to indicate that I don't fully support the people that we have now doing it. That's not at all. But, and those individuals really would become part of the team to do that sort of thing. So I can't say enough. I know what it's like. It is learning to separate the trees, but I'm never losing sight of what the actual forest is. Where do we want to be? So,
Thank you, Dr. Bierce. Thank you, Dr. Beers.
Yeah.
Any follow-up questions for Mr. Walker? Ms. Ortega?
As maybe a piggyback to what Dr. Beers just said, it sounds like we could employ 5 or 6 data analysts full-time if we wanted to analyze everything that could possibly be analyzed. What would be the division's top priorities and for how this data analyst would be utilized? What specific, when Dr. Beers says, where do we want to go? What specific categories or topics are we going to be focused on?
I think we do a significant amount of analysis of student achievement data right now. I think there's probably room for a deeper dive there first, because that's our core mission. And I think one of the other key things moving forward would be staffing and use of staffing across our system. Two key things to start with, as we wean ourselves off the grant, which is very significant, as you pointed out earlier tonight. We may be put in a place where we don't have as much money to support the things we need to do, and so someone to help us navigate that from a data perspective will be very, very important.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to move on. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Yes, sir.
And I believe Mr. Baker has a very brief update on just health insurance tonight, just following some questions from last time as well.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. As a follow-up from the previous budget workshop, we are showing the total cost of a 5% increase to health care, which is $1,173,906, and then the budget impact of a 20-80 split, with WJCC absorbing 20% and the employees absorbing 80%, would be a budget increase of $234,781. The question was previously asked, what would be the impact of a 50-50 split on the budget, and that would be an increase of $586,953. On the next several slides, we will show you the annual increase in healthcare cost as compared to a potential salary increase with a 20-80 split. As a reminder, for employee-only coverage, WJCC pays $7,920 annually on the employee's behalf, while the employee pays $948 annually, and this is for our $500 deductible plan. And for the employee plus spouse coverage, WJCC pays $12,420 annually on the employee's behalf, while the employee pays $3,984 annually. And for the family coverage, WJCC pays $18,780 annually on the employee's behalf, while the employees pay $5,160 annually. Previously, the question of spousal surcharge was also discussed. Last year, we increased spousal surcharge from $50 a month to $75 a month. Currently, we have 575 employees covering their spouses on our plan. A surcharge increase of $25 a month would generate an additional $172,500 annually. On this slide are a couple of examples of what the potential 7% pay raise for teachers would look like alongside a proposal annual increase in healthcare costs in our $500 deductible plan, as well as our $250 deductible plan with a 20-80 split. The net annual salary increase for a step 0 teacher with employee-only coverage on the $500 deductible plan would be $3,051. And for a step 14 teacher, it would be $3,427. On this slide are a couple of examples of what the 7% raise for custodians would look like alongside a proposed annual increase in healthcare cost. The bar graph has not changed from the previous slide. The net salary increase for an entry-level custodian with employee-only coverage on the $500 deductible plan would be $1,309, and for a midpoint custodian, it would be $1,808. On the next two slides, we show the same healthcare impact, but with a 5% raise. Again, the bar graph has not changed. The net annual salary increase for a step 0 teacher with employee-only coverage on the $500 deductible plan would be $2,078, and for a step 14 teacher, it would be $2,346. And on this last slide is the net annual salary increase for an entry-level custodian with employee-only coverage on the $500 deductible plan would be $831, and for a midpoint custodian, it would be $1,184. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And so, Dr. Heron, would you be looking for some guidance from the board based on what you've provided?
I think in some of the conversation previous, I felt that the board was leaning towards an 80-20 split in cost to keep the emphasis firmly on increasing salary, but to contribute something towards the increase in healthcare. And just wanted to, if there's any change or thoughts or anything else the board wants to comment around that, that'd be helpful.
Ms. Hummel?
I'll just say that I think if Miss Young were here, she would probably agree, because she always says this, so I'm going to, we're always in this together, that when it comes to the budget, if there's a choice between giving teachers the salary that will go eventually into their retirement versus, making a choice of healthcare, covering more healthcare costs that doesn't benefit all employees, that I would always prefer that we are putting money in the pockets of everyone across the board that'll help their retirement in the long term, and rather than when we have insurance that not 100% of the teachers and staff buy into. So I would probably be leaning more towards the 80-20. Thank you.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you. This is a lot of information that I feel like I need to study, so I don't want to respond to this, but I do think at some point, and I don't know how it would work moving forward in the future, and whether there's sort of a grandfathering situation with people who are currently our employees and then a new approach with new hires. But I do think an overall analysis of how we have these plans structured, not the not the plans themselves, but the contributions, because it seems a little bit like we're just doing it year to year. Excuse me.
I think, Ms. Cook, the first step this year was to reaffirm that we were using the right company and resource for our health insurance plans, and I think we affirmed that this year. And I think now that's affirmed, it gives us an opportunity to go back and look at it more strategically next year. Thank you.
Before I ask for other questions or remarks, can you remind us where we stand, how close we are to getting your recommended budget?
It comes in 2 weeks.
It's on the 15th.
So
okay.
I will bring everything you've seen already in some form as a recommendation. Miss Yu will present that at the February 15th.
Thank you.
So not the next meeting, but actually the next meeting.
Yeah, the next
meeting. It is February.
Yeah,
yeah.
Meeting.
Lost a day there.
Yeah, I'm always in favor of putting a little bit more cash in our employees' pockets and supporting their eventual retirement as well. I still would like to know, as it's probably in the packet that you gave me today, so I'll hold that. But I'm sure you've answered my question about number of families or employees that opt out of our health care as we've trended to increase the expense on them. So Sure, I've got that.
I don't think that was in the package,
No,
but I think
okay.
we have that kind of, I guess what I would call that migration of, have we seen much? We haven't, even
Okay.
as the last few years, as we've increased cost. I think it was like less than 15 people migrated away from our plan.
Over
Over the last couple of years.
Couple of years.
From last year to this year.
Okay.
It was, I think it was less than 15 employees out of the over 1,300. So even as we increase the cost, it's still a very good plan with a very good value.
Good. Thank you, sir.
I think we can provide some comparative information in your packet as well. Again, it's not comparing like plans because we don't know exactly what type of plans are used elsewhere, but we did compare it to our 500 deductible and our 250 plan to give you a sense of what our employees pay compared to people in other divisions for their health care. But again, it's very hard to make that a really good comparison.
Okay. Good?
Thank
you. You good?
I'm good.
All right, sir. All right, we will move on to item 7.03 for Wjcc schools current year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keever is going to give a very brief presentation tonight as we start our very preliminary thinking of how to approach stepping down some of our mitigation strategies in response to the data. We're at the beginning of a conversation. We've talked to our health committee. We're looking at all kinds of information to try to make some good decisions. And we're just going to give you some high-level thoughts this evening, Mr. Keeper.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Good evening, board members. Just quickly, we remain in high community transmission across the Commonwealth of Virginia, specifically at James City County and in Williamsburg. I will note, however, that over the course of the last 7 days, we have seen a decrease of approximately 35% in terms of case count and case information. It's showing a downward trend, and I wanted to bring that forward. I think this graph, which is available on the CDC daily COVID tracker, also substantiates what I just shared in terms of the downward trend. This particular graph goes all the way back to January 1st of 2021 and shows the case counts over the course of the last 13 months. You'll note that we were substantially high. I shouldn't use the term substantial because that's one of the designations, excuse me. We were high, certainly in January of 2022, and have started to see that come back down the other side of the slope. Again, this is the school level impact information that we have typically shared with you. You may recall that the number of students that were positive in isolation when we got together on the 18th was higher than this, as was the number of students in quarantine. We are seeing currently a similar number of staff members that are currently in isolation. And again, both communities, both Williamsburg and James City County, remain in the high community transmission range. There are a number of factors as we've engaged in this work and started to talk about different consideration points for the mitigation step down. Dr. Herron mentioned conversation with the health advisory team. We've also engaged principals in that discussion and have also talked about it as a senior leadership team. One of the things that I would like to point out is that there is no single solitary data point that we could point to and say, if this, then that. That there are a number of different data points that we would want to utilize as we start to talk about mitigation step down. And here is a sampling of 5 or 6 that would go into the mix for us in terms of looking at when is it potentially safe to start to step down mitigation pieces. Community transmission rates we've talked about extensively. The student vaccination rate information we've talked about. In-school transmission rates, I provided a little bit of that data when we got together on the 18th of January. We would continue to look at that very closely. The number and percentage of student absences. The staff absences is another place that we would want to spend some time exploring, and frankly, it's not just the instructional absences pieces, but it's also critical support staff, to include our bus drivers, to include some of our key staff members that we couldn't run or operate schools unless we had them with us. And finally, we talk a little bit about the dynamic nature of the scenario. Because as we begin to look at mitigation step down, if the data goes the opposite direction, we need to be prepared, not only as a school division, but as a community, to recognize that it may mean that we go back to certain mitigation strategies that had proven effective before. Whether that is potentially, if we were to say we were going to unmask for a period of time, we might need to remask. And similarly, we may be in a position where we would need to say, at this juncture, based on all of these data matrix, we need to be virtual for a period of time with a classroom or with a particular school. I think that administratively, we are very focused on creating the opportunity for the mitigation step down and want to do that responsibly. So this idea was to provide the board a chance to look into some of those pieces that we would be considering and potentially even give us some feedback on your perspective.
Thank you, sir. And is there any board member that would like to open this up to provide that feedback? I think that as I hear this, sir, I also want to recognize that this board met in a special called meeting. I can't even remember what date that was. There's been a lot that's happened since then. And during that meeting, this board, by action of a vote, decided that we would stay the course and that we would maintain alignment with CDC recommendations and guidelines. We've done that. And as I hear this and I see this answered, this question that we had from a public speaker, as she pointed out, waiting for, quote, low-level transmission. You've answered that. I believe we're not waiting for a low-level transmission. There are a number of mitigation touch points that need to be met to get there regarding masks. But that, again, is within the framework of the CDC guidelines. I don't want to dismiss a whole segment of our population that thinks EO2 should have been honored by this division. So, and this is not to open up a debate. I just want to not miss that. If the Supreme Court of Virginia were to make a decision in support of EO2, what does that do for this mitigation step down that you just clarified for us?
It would put us in a position to need to talk about as a division how we could best navigate through that. And I think that what we've said all along is that our idea is that we frankly, wearing masks is not something that we wish to do forever. And it is something that we feel like needs to be in place for the time being as a result of what the metrics are telling us. That if we reach a point where that can be stepped down, we would want to do that. And if there were a particular judicial decree relative to whichever one of the cases right now is making its way through the judicial process, we would need to be prepared to react to that and make the best decision possible for our school division.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you answering that question. And again, that's not to drum up a debate for any reasons, but just to acknowledge that there are people that are looking to hear what our response will be once we get a decision, if that decision is one way or the other.
But I just quickly want to add that there really, it would be inappropriate to put a single data point on the table and say, if we get to this point, you know, we don't need to have any mitigation strategies. That it is a collective piece, and I did hear the speaker earlier talk about the low transmission. I don't believe in any of our discussions as a team have we said if we get to low we can do X. What we've talked about is what are the conditions where we would feel comfortable that our students and staff would be safe, and the other mitigation pieces, because it's not a single one but they're multiple, that those other mitigations could be in place to help ensure some level of safety for all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ms. Ortega.
What are the other conditions in which you would feel safe allowing people to mask optional, not get rid of all of them? What are those conditions?
Well, it shouldn't be a single decision. It should be a unifying group conversation. And I think some of the things that were shared by the health advisory team in our last meeting around the community transmission rates and where those fall. In the paper that was cited by Dr. Powell, the dynamic masking paper, there were some specific markers that were given as examples. That could be a potential place to look in terms of, different places along that continuum in terms of feeling like operationally we can accept those data points. So it's community transmission, it's positivity, it's vaccination rates, but there's not a single number within each of those that we could point to.
There's not even a combination of those numbers that we can point to?
And I think that's why we've put them all up there, as these are the items that we're talking about and looking at internally to make a determination of what's the threshold where we feel like operationally we can meet the requirement of being in person, not just the requirement, but our pledge to be in person 5 days a week for in-person learning, and also provide a step down to a particular mitigation strategy.
Because if there are metrics that we can point to say it's not safe to unmask, then there must be metrics that we can point to say it would be safe.
It'd be helpful to, we'll actually send you the dynamic masking article, which does provide some of those data points. Like, for example, and I'm not saying this is where we will be at all, it talks about high transmission rate, like we're in now, is universal masking across the board. No questions, staff, students, everything. Then it talks about coming down a level to substantial transmission, which is below 100, which we're still a long way off. But it says you have choice of masking when you have 80% vaccinated. Now, that 80% vaccinated may be an unrealistic target for us to ever have a choice. But ideally, that's what this paper is saying. And it's not research-based, it's not peer-reviewed, it's just an approach to dynamic masking.
Who published that paper?
Just a second, I've got it in front of me.
Thank you.
But we'll provide it for you. It's just something that they provided for us, that we were looking at ways to start to thinking about stepping down mitigation strategies in a safe way where everyone could be in person learning.
Journal of School Health.
Do you have more questions? I'm sorry, I didn't want to skip over you.
I probably do, but I'll let others
Okay.
know if they want.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I look at this list, it seems like it almost should be two separate lists. So I think community transmission rates and student vaccination rates do inform our mitigation strategies, but then student absences, instructional teacher, and the absences inform our operational response to what's going on, right? So those are like two separate buckets.
Yes.
And so I wonder if it's time to start talking about it differently. So, what mitigation steps we take in response to what's going on in the community as far as transmission and student vaccination rates. So that's masking and social distancing and wiping things down and how we, but then they're not unrelated, but if we have a lot of absences, student or instructional or otherwise, then that determines whether we're virtual or not. So, so it seems like this is actually a kind of conflating two different things. One is operationalized and one is mitigation. As far as in this case, it happens to be COVID, but the absences could be in result of multiple issues, right? So it's just an observation as I'm sitting here listening, and I just think moving forward, we may want to start thinking about it separately.
And in actual fact, the article that we'll share with you does put it in two buckets.
Oh, well, there you go. I haven't even read the article yet.
So you're right on target. It's the burden on the school, it's the burden on operations, it's absenteeism. If you have a certain number of teachers absent, do you have to go virtual? Right. And at that point, if you still continue to have large number of absences, should you be masked going in to stop in-school transmission? So yes, they're very related, but they are, and they impact each other. But
right.
Yes, they are in two buckets.
But yeah, but one could argue the absence thing could be, you'd have to operationalize that for perhaps something other than COVID, maybe.
Absolutely.
So anyway, just my observation.
Yep, absolutely.
Ms. Ortega.
Yeah, I just have a question. Would it be advisable to maybe expand our health advisory committee? Maybe include a child psychologist, reading specialist, speech pathologist? Could we start not replacing the conversation, but expanding the conversation to include some of the other concerns that have been the attention of the board over the last months?
We can certainly look into that. That's a strong possibility, but I think we are very aware as educators of some of the impacts of masking, and certainly have read a lot about that, and are very aware of some of the things, but I think we're balancing that against the health impact, so it's always a balancing act. But yeah, absolutely, we'll reach out.
And I just have one last question,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
I may. Are we looking at some of the surrounding divisions that have gone mask optional and tracking their case numbers?
We can do that. I think there's different divisions have different methods for reporting information, and different divisions have also utilized different school calendars, so that I think we would be in a better position towards the latter part of February to have a firmer understanding of impact. And I think that one of the, well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to look at impact, let's look at staffing too, because I've read a couple of articles about shortages in staffing for people who didn't come back because of that. So
Right, and so I think that the part of that is a reporting mechanism, and you might read that in the press, or you might know that anecdotally, versus the information that you can readily find available on a website that says this is how many COVID positives we've had. So it's a little bit challenging to say, well, let's look over what they're doing because of X, Y scenarios. But I think based on what they put on their COVID dashboard, we could have a handle on perhaps increased case counts.
Right, because either way, it could help make the case.
Sure.
Either way we go, we would want to have, make the best case possible to our community and to everyone on both sides of this. So I just think the more information we can give that is concrete, I think the better we would all be.
I think what we'd have to reach out and physically ask a division would be, how many teachers did you lose as a result of this decision? Anecdotally, I have reached out and I have got information from one other superintendent, and there were 17 teacher resignations the day after masks became optional in a school system. And that same day, there were over 600 requests from parents who wanted their students to go virtual because of the mask option. So we don't know what the impact would be in our community, but that's just one example.
Right. But I think those are data points that are
Absolutely
helpful for the community to know, because I don't know that that's how people are even thinking about it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think whatever we do, I mean, Mr. Dial asked about the impact of the executive order if it were to happen tomorrow. We would be looking at a very different set of data. Our ability to contact trace would pretty much disappear. We would really be looking at the number of teacher absences and our ability to run school and keep it going as one of our the burden on schools would become a huge piece. And in school transmission, how that changes when we take off masks. It's been very low, but does that change dramatically within the first 4 weeks of having a choice? So we would have a different set of data if we were living in that place right now.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you for the update, Mr. Keever.
Sir.
And for all the answers to our questions. I appreciate it. Move on to 8.01, review revisions to policy AD, educational philosophy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Bourgeois is going to present this policy change this evening. Thank you, Ms. Bourgeois.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. It is indeed a pleasure to present recommended revisions to policy AD, educational philosophy, to you tonight. In its 2021 annual report, the Special Education Advisory Committee presented recommendations developed by a subcommittee they had last year, which worked to identify policy wording to support inclusive practices in WJCC schools. This recommendation was passionately supported by former board member and last year's board representative to SEAC, Ms. Lisa Ownby. This fall, division staff sought direction from the school board policy committee and received support for identifying if there was an appropriate policy in which to include SEAC's recommendations. In August 2021, the board adopted policy AD, Educational Philosophy. This policy, with recommended revisions based on the SEAC recommendation, was presented to SEAC for review during their January 13th, 2022 meeting and to the policy committee on January 19th, prior to coming to you this evening. The recent JLARC report also emphasizes the need for divisions to enhance their inclusive practices. This is one way in which WJCC Public Schools is supporting these measures. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you tell us who JLARC is? For the public?
Joint Legislative Audit
Thank you.
Commission,
Joint
yeah.
Legislative
Audit
Audit
Commission.
Review Committee.
Yep.
You knew that.
Committee or commission?
Commission.
Commission.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Bourgeois?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any comments from policy committee?
Yeah, just thank you for all the work on this, and thanks to our previous board chair for her passion in you know, making sure that we are including everyone in our policies and making everyone feel included. So, and thanks for all your work, Ms. Bourgeois, as always.
All right. Well, I think we'll look forward to supporting this at our next meeting, Ms. Bourgeois. And can I ask, can we put this on a consent agenda for next meeting? Any? Okay. I think we're good for that. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right. Let's move on to action items. Approval of personnel actions, 9.01. Can I have a motion to approve the personnel actions?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the personnel actions as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Ms. Aller?
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mrs. Portico.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Thank you. 9.02, approval of revisions to the 2021-2022 school calendar. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the revisions to the 2021-2022 school calendar as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Ms. Cook. Okay, thank you, Ms. Cook. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Ortego. Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye, thank you. Board member comments. I'd like to start with Dr. Beers, if I may.
Okay, I'm not muted. I just one or two things I'd like to say. I really would very much like to come back to that position that the superintendent has, would like to have, in terms of, data analysis. I think, we're long overdue, and it's really crucial, and it helps staff, it helps teachers, it helps students, and it helps the board be able to look at information that's been analyzed and presented in a way that is comprehensible, and that's the role of a good person in that area. Some places call them institutional research people, the numbers, but it's really critical to have, and I can't say that enough, that I really support that. I think it's really good, and stay safe. I'll be back.
We look forward to having you back. Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ms. Hummel?
I have nothing tonight,
All
thanks.
right. Ms. Hundley.
I have three things
All
tonight.
right.
First of all, happy Chinese New Year. It's the year of the tiger, and I just found out I am in that year. So that means I'm going to have a great year. Second, tomorrow, I think we will have early spring. I just looked at Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania's weather, and it looks like it'll be cloudy. So they're going to pull Phil out, and he's going to say spring is coming. So, but he's only 40% right. So I think we have more winter. And last thing, I hope that somebody will invite me in to see some of the interesting Black History presentations. I don't know what will be going on, but I would love to get into a school and see what's going on for Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Ms. Ortego?
Yeah, I asked a lot of questions, so I'll try to keep my comments brief. But I just want to thank the staff for all the hard work that they have done, as always. Dr. Heron and Mr. Keever especially, and appreciate all the answers to my many questions as I'm still learning. I just want to touch back on something that I asked about earlier about expanding the conversation, maybe changing the way we have the conversation. I think if we're going to start to think about how we might step down our mitigation strategies, we might want to think about how we change the conversation surrounding mitigation strategies. And there are a lot of concerns on both sides. They're all valid, and they should all be part of the conversation. So I just want to reiterate that. Yeah, that's all I got tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. We had a number of speakers from the public, and I appreciate every single one of them, and taking the time to come out with us and just share their perspective and to do it with passion and forethought of heart as well. Ms. Hundley asked Ms. Walter how some of the grant funds are being earmarked and if they could be earmarked towards suicide awareness, and we got that response from Ms. Walter. I think I would like to know, because Ms. Walter indicated that there are plans in the works. Nothing's been done yet, but there are plans in the works, so I'm glad that there's at least recognition there, acknowledgement there of the need. So I think that in the future, I would appreciate knowing what we're doing, what those plans are, how they've materialized, how it's being received in the schools, and just what that looks like. Because as one of our speakers did indicate, and I think we all agree, suicide is incredibly important to be aware of in the minds and hearts of our young people and our adults in our school systems, every single person. We're knocking on 2.5 years dealing with COVID, and it's not getting any easier for some folks. And I wonder, who's just hanging on by a thread. And I think we all kind of wonder that. So it'd be nice to know that we're putting some plans into action there. We also heard about some challenges we might be having at War Hill. So I don't know, what's happening there, although I do have 2 kids there. We'll just maybe ask that we look into that. I think that you're already ready to look into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Heron. I appreciate all the work that you and your staff do, Dr. Keever, and everyone else that's presented today. It was really wonderful to see Mr. Snipes back with us, and thank you for your tireless efforts. And I know you guys don't even get a break over the summer, and so it's ongoing. I know. I think for the larger part of the community, that's expected. But again, it doesn't need to be a thankless job. So thank you guys sincerely, and you, Miss Aller. I can see you over there, Miss Aller too. We're going to celebrate our clerk in 2 weeks. We haven't forgotten. With that, let's move on to upcoming events. Special Education Advisory Committee meeting virtually on February 10th at 6:30. Policy Committee meeting on the 14th of February at 8:30 virtually, and then the School Liaison Committee meeting on the 24th of February at 8 a.m. virtually. And then upcoming meetings, February 15th, meeting, closed session here in room 300, and then a regular meeting at James Blair Middle School in the gym at 6:30. And then on the 1st of March, we've got a closed session at 6, public hearing on the proposed operating budget at 6:30, then work session and action items on the 1st as well at 6:30, following the public hearing. All right. Did I miss anything? All good? Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned.